All right. We have not begun yet, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to spam a bunch of people here. All right, so let's start off by spamming Twitter because probably nobody cares there anyway. Let's see. Swirty Pie is going to help me spam people. Twitter. Spam Twitter. All right, what's the spam message? Tonight we're hanging out with Kade Wells, professional teacher who uses D&D, Dungeons, and I'm using a hashtag too, Dungeons and Dragons, to help his students. He's worked with Wizards of the Coast to implement. What would you say? You've worked with Wizards of the Coast to implement like
They've begun to create curriculum, bro.
D&D teaching curriculum. Would that be accurate?
D&D as curriculum.
Okay.
That's what I do. I use D&D literally as curriculum, and then
Okay.
Wizards of the Coast has started creating curriculum activities that are not D&D, but are an introduction, I guess would be. You can
Cool.
kind of deduct.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
Deduct that, how you
That works. That works. Oh, we should probably. All right. I got the Twitter one done. Post that.
I think I got all my nerd buddies convinced into going to GaryCon.
Oh, really? Dude, I'll be there. I enjoyed last year, man. It was cool.
I think my homies, they never really been to a conference like that, and we've been friends for 24 years because of D&D way back
Yeah.
from freshman year of college. And I just think we owe ourselves a guy's road trip, and it'd be cool to look you in the eye and shake your hand.
Yeah, dude.
I can go, go pal around with the Wizards nerds. And man, Luke, my journey has been so weird.
Yeah, we'll get into that, dude.
And just reflecting.
Yeah, man. Oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't put the link to the live stream when I tweeted it out. I'm smart. All right, let's try that again.
Failure.
Let's go back to Twitter. All right. Social media platforms, Twitter. There we go. But since I pay for Twitter, I can edit my post. Ha!
Mm.
See, $8 a month doing its job. Edit post. Whee!
If I had one job, keeping up with socials might be easier. That would be where my employee would come in.
Oh yeah.
I'd be seriously like, I'm an ideas guy. I generate about an idea a minute. There's so many things I'm not good at, but ideas is where I really shine. It's kind of a frustrating position, honestly.
Okay. I think I have all of the spamming done. Close that. Okay, cool. Now, sweet. Oh, I gotta get my chat up. Then we're almost ready to start, ladies and gentlemen. Woohoo! Dr. Doom? Israel Morales says, is that Dr. Doom? I don't know. I'm not Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom's pretty cool though. All right, I think we're ready to rock and roll then. So I will. All right. What happened? My cat pushed my camera. All right, let's just fix that. There we go. Okay. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the live stream. Tonight we have a special guest on the stream. We have, and they can't see you yet, dude. So they're just looking at my pretty face for now, my ruggedly handsome face. Tonight we have on stream Kade Wells. He has been using Dungeons and Dragons game theory and product-based experiential learning in the classroom for over a decade. His research findings for student growth using D&D have been shared at conferences around the world. He has overseen the formation of a graduate credit class that trains teachers how to play D&D. He plays D&D with his classes, and his hope is to help people understand the great power that D&D has in educational settings. He has worked with Wizards of the Coast. They're currently creating some curriculum to start implementing D&D and role-playing games in the classroom and a whole bunch of cool stuff. So he's going to be talking tonight about using D&D as an educational tool, how it can help students and stuff, and he's got some cool stories as well he's going to share with us. So we're going to be hanging out with him tonight. It's going to be super fun. Before we do that, though, I need to do our sleazy plugs. We do have a giveaway going on tonight, so at the end of the stream, we'll be giving away a D&D book to... Is it a D&D book? No, it's a copy of Into the Fae, a module that I wrote. It was our first Kickstarter, level 1 to 5 adventure module. So anyway, winner will get that, or you can get DM Lair store credit and get a whole bunch of cool stuff too. So join the giveaway. It's totally free to do so. And little guy wants his belly rubbed, and we don't have time to rub your belly, little guy, because you may not have noticed this, but we're in the middle of a live stream here, buddy. All right, and you're gonna get cat hair all over my shirt. I just cleaned my shirt off. Next thing we got to talk about. Woo! Let's thank our wonderful patrons. All these folk right here help support all of the work that we do, all the content we create, all of the videos that come out to help game masters with their games, answer questions, these live streams that we do, bringing on special guests to talk about cool topics like tonight. All these wonderful patrons here help support all of that work, and I'm deeply appreciative. They help pay the bills. We have full-time team member. We have people that work with us, and all these patrons help support all of that so that we can bring this content to you. I have a ton of cat hair on my desk now. Thanks, little guy. So thank you, patrons. I love you. Our patrons also get Lair magazine every month. That's our premium resource with D&D 5th edition and Pathfinder 2 adventures, maps, puzzles, traps, monsters, whole bunches of resources for folks to use in their games. And these patrons right here support us at a greater level, so they get their names read out loud. Here we go. Adam B, Agile Monk, Alexandro N, Alex S, Alexander O, Alan D, Amanda W, Ambers, Angelique K, Anton K, Art Soccer, Ashley, Ulcus, oh geez, I just lost a patron. Beavis Khan, Bees in Space, Black Wolf, Brad M, Bradley H, Brandon A, Brandon P, Brian D, Brad O, Brian the Lion, Brian J, Carl C, Chris C, Christine B, Christopher J, Colette H, Colin W, Connor D, Contrary Gravy, Corey A, Corey H, Courtney H, Daz What Up, David S, DeWolf, Dalen W, Dean B, Derek E, Derek K, Dice Goblin Wannabe, Dominic S, Dono D, Dazum, Dungeon of Terra, Dutch, Edward R, Edward B, Edward L, Infrabo, and Dorian 72, Eric B, Erdo, Gabriel T, Gary C, Gene A, Generic Throwaway, George E, George R, Greg P, Guapo, GVTM, Heart Ungaled, Helltongue, HLD, Iron Cascade, It's Baobon, Jackie Pizza, Jake L, Jacob K, James C, James L, Jan F, Jennifer M, Jeremy W, Jarek, Jim P, Joanne P, Joel, John A, John J, John the Wicked, John Pinkanos, Jonathan F, Jonathan S, Jonathan V, Jordan A, Jose, Joseph H, Joseph W, Josh M, Josh S, Joshua J or G, Juan Kamata, Ken Konotasuti, sorry, Kevin F, Killsaber K, Kirby, Crystal S, Curryclaw, Laura L, Laser Vision, Lionheart, Linda, Loki, Lord H, Luke E, Matlock, Macy S, Magna, Marcel V, Matt S, Matthew C, Meepanode, Meepy, Michael G, Mirostal, Mitchell, Mo20s, Mordakian, Mr. Owl, Nerd with Glasses, Nerd Over 900, Nicholas H, Nick H, Neareth, Old Man Mage, PN, Paul B, Paul S, Pethnick, Bivol, Pork Chef Bacon, Puppet Master, Quithemo, Randy B, Rebar, Renner C, Richard M, Rob W, Robert C, Robin B, Ryan, Sale R, Sakura, Samantha J, Samuel S, Scott R, Scott S, Sebron, Shadow, Shane L, Sheila A, Simfan, Snapbragger, Soul Bora Gaming, Son of a Sofa Man, Soul Naya, Stan the Man, Stefan G, Stephen T, Stephen S, Steve S, Sturm, Terry V, The Tour Cross Hospital, The Old DM, The Wookiee, The Fuzzle, The New Bad Ombre, Thomas F, Thomas J, Timothy T, TK, Travis Lost, Trinity Series, Twarner, Tyler D, Tyler R, Unalloyed, Undying Warlock, Valagor, Victoria Q, Vinny, Vladimir S, Walt O, Wesley K, William C, XX Redrum, Zachary J, Zombie Trami. All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your support. I do appreciate it. And now, without further ado, we have our special guest now with us. Hey, what's up, dude? How you doing? They can see you now.
Hey guys, how's it going? Thanks for having me, Luke. Really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely. Okay, dude. So you're like D&D teacher, dude. How did you get into this thing of using like D&D in the classroom? How did you get into teaching D&D, all that kind of stuff? Give us like the story,
You want the origin story?
the origin story.
The
Yeah.
origin story was D&D came to me when I was a 10-year-old boy living in a farming community in the middle of nowhere, South Dakota. Anybody who grew up in the middle of nowhere anywhere kind of knows how the story goes. And I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, and there was nothing to do. Nothing to do for kids, especially nothing to do. 3 bars in the town, but not anything for kids to do. So D&D came to me through my brother's friend. My brother's 4 years older than me, and a friend taught me how to play over Christmas break. He had gone to private school near Minneapolis and had, access to other people and learned how to play. He taught me how to play, and I was 10, and I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest tool for my imagination that I could have ever discovered. And
What
on life
edition
went.
was
Every
it?
friend, what's that?
What edition was it that you started playing
That
with?
was late first edition. That was
Okay.
just pre second edition. I
Hmm.
think the idea of second edition was just happening.
Cool.
So second edition was really advanced. Second edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, I believe, was where my friends and I started when we were like 12.
Okay, cool.
Um, so I learned how to play, and every friend that I would have from there on out, pretty much through school, would be a D&D player, which was valuable for me because I was in a class of 56 kids
Mhm.
and, the only really creative guy. So my life would continue that way. Okay. So every
Uh,
friend that I had would be a D&D player, hours and hours, late Mountain Dew nights, Cheese Whiz, all the stuff, 4 a.m., sun comes up stuff, late nights as a kid.
Playing
Um,
D&D.
playing
Now,
D&D.
was it a prerequisite of being your friend that somebody played D&D, or did you just
No,
like brainwash them and get them into it when they like became your friend unknowingly?
I taught all my friends how to play.
Okay.
Any friend that I had that would be, amenable to
Hmm.
playing, I taught how to play. And then very shortly, you get into oral interp and like debate and stuff like that when you're in middle school. And I met this guy named Tom, and one day I saw him walking down the hallway of the mall holding a Dungeon Master's guide like
Oh
this,
yeah.
you know. And I was like, and I met him at oral interp contest. He's from another town, right? When you live
Uh,
in rural areas,
uh.
everybody's from a different town. And I said, dude, you play D&D? He goes, yeah. Like,
He's like expecting you to like make fun of him or punch him in the nose or something for being a nerd or something, right? He's like,
anyway, we became instant friends,
yeah,
and
that's
all
cool.
the friendships
Uh-huh.
for the rest of life would follow that theme. How did it
Mm.
become a teacher thing? So in college, freshman year, we're in the dorm floor, and we had a little party from people from the town where I was playing with people, and one of the guys was in college with me, and he says, "Hey, dude, let's start a group." So we started a little group. Everybody kept dying. And so I go through the dorm floor and I'm like, cleric, we need a cleric. Anybody, where you remember dorm floors.
Uh-huh.
So I'm literally town crying for a cleric, and my good buddy Winkler, now 24 years,
Uh-huh.
was like, "You talking D&D, man?" I was like, "Yeah, man, we need a cleric. We keep going down. We need somebody with some healing power." Guys, this is 1998, okay?
Yeah.
1998.
Uh-huh.
And so through Winkler, a whole bunch of other friends now again of 24 years, we formed a party. We've been playing together forever. That's
Hmm.
that part of the origin story, where the friendship part of it, the
Yeah.
socio emotional thing, like where
Hmm.
I realized that was the thing. We would continue to go through college together. We had campaigns all through college, and years would go on. D&D stuck with all of us. We'd play with this group and that group, but mostly my buddies played with. I moved around a lot, going to colleges and things like that, trying to find my destiny. And when I went back to school for my second bachelor's degree for education, third, Luke, it's my third bachelor's degree was in
What were
education.
the first two?
I got a degree in communication studies,
Uh-huh.
which with an emphasis in production and
Okay.
directing. So I
Okay.
was a director for a long time.
Okay.
I helped create community theaters in towns
Mm.
all over the
Okay.
place. And then my second degree was English,
Okay.
and then my third degree was in English education. And so there's 3 bachelor's degrees. But it was as
Oh.
I was in that education course where you're taking your coursework and you're learning about how to engage your students, how to assess them, how to challenge them,
Mm-hmm.
how to get them to use their voice, how to give them choice, all the things that we were taught in education classes. It hit me kind of like a lightning. At first, it was a bit of a fog, and I'm like, why does this all sound so familiar? Like, what is it about this language they're using? Okay, student focused, student centered, student driven, student choice. And I'm like, oh, I've been doing this since I was 10.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the moment while I was finishing my 3rd degree to get my education degree in English, where I said, well, D&D literally teaches kids how to do all of this at a young age. And this would be the greatest teachers, right? Like if teachers, a good DM is going to be a good teacher. A good teacher is going to be a good DM. And that occurred to me through this coursework. And that was only I only needed to do 2 years to get my English certification as a teacher. Is literally taking all education classes mostly and reading some young adult literature.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the eureka happened, where I was like, holy smokes, like everything that I've done my whole life as a D&D player is what I'm being told makes an excellent teacher.
Right.
Oh, there's something there. So then my wife and I met my wife in college that year. Again, destiny was, I mean, my life is so amazing. My wife is an incredible person, and she wanted to move to Houston because they were doing student teaching there and they were giving really great jobs away
Mm-hmm.
right out of student teaching with great salaries. But this is Title One. Title One is high poverty, high crime, high need,
Mm-hmm.
right? Kind of
Yeah.
quote unquote bad neighborhoods.
Yep.
And I thought with my life experience, like these kids are going to need me. Like this is going to be a great place for me to be because I've been through all kinds of stuff. And I started using D&D as an intervention tool. Intervention in education means using it for kids who need something different than what everybody else uses as an intervention, right?
So like standard education isn't really working for them, type of
Right.
thing. Like there's the normal classes and stuff just aren't doing it, and they need something else, right?
Yep.
A different approach
Disengaged,
or something.
disinterested,
Yeah. Yeah.
dyslexia, autism,
Mm-hmm.
defiance disorder, ADHD, right? They would all be things that might include an intervention of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started building the research before I actually got a job. And so was able to sort of instill it when it actually started working. And it was
Mm-hmm.
my 2nd year where I really said, like, I'm going to go for this. I'm going to teach kids how to play D&D.
Mm-hmm.
I gamified my classroom. We can talk about gamification a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
By 2nd year, I asked my team to identify kids and we had a reading class, which was basically designed as intervention to help the kids who are struggling readers figure out how to read. It was Texas, so everybody's trying to pass the STAR test. Anybody from Texas knows the STAR test is a really big deal. So my team identified a bunch of, a kid per room that they thought could really benefit from D&D. We had already started a D&D club at school. The benefits of that had been really clear and obvious. But this intervention squad of kids that I put together was autism, dyslexia, hyperactivity and defiance disorder with a kid. And then one of my kiddos had really profound trauma from his life in Honduras. And then there were some swing throughs. There's so much movement in a Title I district. Kids come into your school, kids leave. There's lots of transients and things.
Mm-hmm.
So I had those four core kids. And the results that I saw were so overwhelming so quickly that I said, this is the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
This is not what I do.
Yeah.
And anybody who tries to stop me or get in my way because they don't know or don't understand, I'm going to tell them everything that I know, and then they're going to be silent. And
so you implemented that. You said you had 4 students in those each of those categories, right? And you implemented your D&D with them, and you started to see results.
Yes, sir. Almost immediately.
So how did you, and we have a couple questions in the chat. I want to get to those, but I want to just pose you a question first. Like, in what way are you implementing D&D as an educational tool? That's the first question. And then what kind of results were you seeing with these kids?
Okay, so for those kiddos, if we're reflecting back in time, today now, my kids are playing D&D tomorrow.
Okay.
During class, on a school day. They'll
Mhm.
play for 90 minutes.
Okay.
So I do that every single week in perpetuity, all year long. Back then, it was 3 days a week. I got to pull them for that reading intervention period.
Yeah.
And that I think was a 45-minute period. So everything, and as an adventure creator, Luke, you'll appreciate this. Everything had to be really episodic, like the D&D cartoon,
Uh-huh.
right? Like you show up and I'm like, okay, the town is on fire, and somebody hands you a bucket.
Yeah.
Go. That it had to be that level of,
Mhm.
and still today we have to do that. So I was pulling them 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for intervention during the middle of the day. It was right
Mhm.
before lunch for 45 minutes, and we would play D&D together alone in my classroom. And it was just like the 5 or 6 of us. And so that's how logistically it worked. Is I was department chair already by then, and that's
Mhm.
pretty amazing all by itself. But so I was able to pull kids for this intervention,
Mhm.
and that's how I implemented it. So that was 3 days a week for 45 minutes. That answers the first question. What was the follow-up, Luke?
Yeah, so you basically were just like 3 days a week. You'd pull those kids out of their class. They'd play D&D. That was it. That's the
Yep, that
thing.
was it.
Okay, and
I
you.
used to try to create, I tried for years, like so many other educators who love D&D,
Mhm.
to create something that was like D&D that they could use in their classroom.
Yeah.
And the more and more I did this, and it doesn't matter what role-playing game you're into, honestly,
Yeah.
that I should say that right now. It doesn't matter if you're playing Star Wars or Pathfinder
Mhm.
or D&D or pick GURPS, like a lot, like
Yeah.
GURPS is
It's
so complicated but so
yeah.
neat and malleable. So
Yeah.
whatever game you wanted to play doesn't
Mhm.
matter. It was the usage of the mind and the way that what the brain is doing when you're actually playing a
Mhm.
game like that
Yeah.
makes kids so successful. So the dyslexic kid, you want some anecdotes? Are we ready for a couple anecdotes from the cohort?
Yeah, let's get to that. I want to get to that, but I want to hit some of these questions in chat too really
Go
quick, and then we'll come right back to that. We'll hold some people in suspense. So we have one question. Where was that first one that I saw? So Marcin says, and by the way, Marcin in chat, he is one of our cartographers. He does amazing map work. Marcin says, how do you approach decision makers at schools to allow implementation of such programs? I'm thinking about starting some work with youth in my place, but could use some advice. So basically, how do you get the administrators to bite on this idea?
So I'm back then. I have to go back in time to reflect on it. My administrator right now, Micah Fesler, is my principal, and he's one of the most amazing men I've maybe ever met. He knew his son was going to be in my class, and was one of the reasons he really wanted me to work at that school, because his kid wouldn't learn D&D with him, but he knew that he would learn D&D with his teacher.
Uh-huh.
So with my current position, and then my district coordinator over federal programs, also was not an avid D&D player, but a peddler, if you will, but understood the power of games as an educator. So I have, above support and above support, and that's really, really great. Back then, all I could do was show data.
Hmm.
Okay. So I had data because I had been, I had this little draw of kids second year, and all I had to do was track their scores. And
Hmm.
their scores, Luke, started for a dyslexic kid, for an autistic kid, for a hyperactivity kid. Their scores were very low because they just didn't care most of the time or weren't concerned. But after 3 months of playing D&D with me,
Hmm.
whatever common assessment they took showed that every single one of those kids, no, this doesn't happen. Every single one of those kids showed growth. It might have
Yeah.
been 2%, might have been 5, might have been
Yeah.
15, but literally every single one of those kids showed growth. And the only difference in their life was me pulling them from D&D. So then I show the
Mhm.
bosses the data.
Yeah.
Here's the data. Here's how these kids grew. And not only that, when we get into anecdotes, teachers noticed what was happening with these kiddos. These kiddos were high need.
Yeah.
They really needed something to change their life. And whatever it was that they found in this group that we did 3 days a week
Mhm.
changed everything for them.
So
So
they're literally just playing D&D,
that's it.
and you're seeing changes in their scholastic performance in other areas like math, science, reading, and crap like that, right?
Yep. Yep.
Just D&D, that's it. And then they're just starting to do better.
And like I was saying, I
Uh,
went into it learning, trying to think of how can I make a learning game that's just like D&D. And then
mm,
the more and more I ruminated about it, I was like, D&D already is
yeah.
its own learning tool, as is every role-playing game.
Mm.
Think about the people that you know that play role-playing games, which is everybody that you know,
A
I would
lot of them.
assume.
It's a lot of them. Yeah.
And think about their analytical ability, their reading ability,
Oh,
their ability
dude.
to think about statistics and look at a map and all the things that they know. Well, that's because they grew up being a D&D nerd.
Dude, I'm
So
thinking of my home group right now. Joe is like a computer programming genius. He works with AI models and crap like that. One of the guys is like a project manager, makes good dough. The other one was a veterinarian for a while and stuff. And then, yeah, so I mean, a lot of the guys that I know who play D&D and stuff, like they're, they got it going on. They're not just like, whatever. Yeah. So yeah, it definitely is helpful for sure. Yeah.
my friend group as well, my home group is I got a guy who works for a nonprofit organization that feeds the homeless. He writes grants and things. I
Mhm.
got a buddy who is a social worker who runs household. He's a manager of households of mentally handicapped people.
Yeah.
He's the overlord of all of those houses. I've got a buddy who works in HVAC and installs air conditioners and heaters, something that we all need, right?
Yeah, you could make
Um,
good money doing that too, dude.
got a buddy who's a plumber. So even just looking at that
Uh-huh.
strata, and another social worker who is like, when you're really in trouble, you come to them and you're like,
Hmm.
I missed my rent because of whatever, and they decide whether or not to give you money. So all my friends are in positions of success,
Yeah.
of varying degrees. But what I think I like to think about in terms of my friend group is the variance of persons that are there, and how D&D is what brings this kind of eclectic group of people with different trade skills together,
Yeah.
and there's our common fold. And that's what I've noticed with students, Luke,
Hmm.
is that there's everybody's so different. And
Hmm.
then when you sit down at the table and it's like, oh, we got a monster to fight. And it's kind of like being in the army, where like you may not always get along,
Yeah.
when you're on base, but if there's an enemy coming over the
Uh,
hill, you're always pointing in the same direction because you got an enemy coming over the hill.
right. Yeah, that makes sense. So I think so Marcin, it sounds like the answer is present data to administrators to try to
If you
convince
need
them.
an avenue to present data, an easy way to do that is to start a club and run it after school for, like, 90 minutes is what I do my club for. And that way nobody's going to deny you a club, right? Like
Mm.
no administrator worth their salt is going to say, no, you can't run a D&D club after school. If you run a D&D club after school and you select certain individuals, especially if you're looking for certain things or kiddos that need extra help or whatever, and run it
Mhm.
sort of as a tutorial, you will be able to track that data, and that data will show exactly what those games do. Sorry to interrupt you, Luke.
No, 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 that's perfect. Yeah. So he could do that. And then, I mean, we have your email down in the description too. So I bet
Please,
you have some data you could send him as well if
I
he were
do.
to reach out to you or something. So yeah.
My
Yeah.
reading data after 3 years, I had kiddos in a class for 3 years, and their data was tracked, and the line goes dut dut dut. I mean,
Hmm.
it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
After first
That's
year, they really took a dip up, and then after that second year, their third year was like a banana arc towards the upper right hand corner of the chart.
Yeah, that's crazy. So, like about 5 minutes ago, you were telling a story about something do D&D in school or something, and I was smiling. And the reason I was smiling is you were talking about pulling kids out of class to play D&D, and like I had it wasn't an AP biology class, but it was organic biology. Okay, like hardcore organic biology in high school. And I'll tell you what, man, the entire class every single day, I had a D&D book, and I was literally reading a D&D book. I was ignoring the teacher the entire time. I was reading a D&D book, and then the night before every test, I would read the book, the course book, the textbook. I would study, and I'd get 100 on the test. But like, I was just reading a D&D book the whole class, and so you were talking about that. I was like, you know what? If I could play D&D in school, maybe I would have paid attention to that class more. But then probably not. Probably not. I probably would have been thinking about what we're going to do on the next adventure. So I think it's a wash. But
Would you like to know the skill set that D&D gave you that made you able to do that with biology?
go for it, dude.
Dungeons and Dragons is informational text.
Uh huh.
It's
Yeah.
designed like a textbook.
Yeah.
It's not a narrative story.
Hmm.
So you have headings, you have captions, you have charts, you have graphs, you have art, which draws us in.
Yeah.
You have all of it's written like law, right? So it's
Mm.
written in a lawyer's sort of jargon,
Hmm.
which means then when you look at your biology textbook, it is in the same format.
Yeah.
as the player's handbook is.
Uh-huh.
So imagine the power of teaching a 12-year-old, here's this book that's going to actually engage you with filled with informational text that you actually have to you have to know it in order to activate it, right? And so
Right. So
you already knew how to do that. You didn't know you were doing it, Luke, but
uh-huh.
that's your brain already knew how to navigate that informational text from biology so well that you were picking. Imagine, remember when you were 12 or 13 or whenever you started playing D&D,
Yeah.
all the terminology that you didn't know.
Hmm.
And you're like, oh man, if I don't know what that word means, my character's not going to be as effective as if I knew what that word meant. And so then you know what the word meant.
Yeah.
And that transfer of skill sets from Dungeons and Dragons to biology in your case is so common in what I see with kiddos
Yeah.
that it proves my point over and over and over again.
So
Your
you're
brain already knew how to do it.
Yeah, so you basically so the D&D books are basically textbooks, and you're strongly motivated to learn what it means and how to use it because you want to
Correct.
play the game. And
Yep.
that forces you to learn and apply yourself. It improves, I'm imagining, your reading comprehension, your analytical skills, and then you have creativity and stuff because you're applying it, application, all of that. There's like a teacher list of like, comprehension and application and synthesis, and I forget there are like 9 things or something, but
Yep.
it probably engages a lot of those different things, right? And so that, yeah, I can see definitely how that it helps. And also, I think the other awesome thing that I love about D&D is the social aspect, right? Because I think uh, you got to wonder, if kids, like, if they're on their phones all the time and they're just like distancing themselves from like quote unquote real social interaction, when they're in a D&D game, I think they're getting some of that social interaction that they wouldn't otherwise. So is there an aspect of that as well that plays into things?
Yes, absolutely. That's actually one of the biggest focuses of schools today
Mhm.
is it's called socio-emotional learning.
Okay.
Um, and kiddos would sit in a corner and say nothing
Hmm.
just to get through the day.
Yeah.
But when you give them this platform, and but creating groups is hard. It's kind of a long process. I have them write their character class on one side of a card and their name on the other side of the card. And I kind of like put them around a table and shift kids around until the classes all fit. And it's a difficult start, but it's also really fun. And once you have your group built, then your group is built. Um, the socio-emotional learning, I feel as teachers, one of our jobs is to prevent lost skills.
Hmm.
Okay, like we have to prevent things from being lost to time. And in our digital age, it's become really easy for kids to ignore each other,
Hmm.
except the people that they're used to talking to.
Yeah.
So when you create a random group, relatively random, you try to create friendship, keep friendships within a group as much as you can as a teacher so that they can have fun with their friend. But there's going to be, a set of two and a set of two and a set of two probably, and a dungeon master.
Hmm.
And forcing those kids to interact with peers outside their normal circle
Hmm.
with an objective,
Yeah.
with a context,
Hmm.
you really quickly see your classroom culture
Hmm.
turns into this amazing place. My
Yeah.
classroom is an amazing place, Luke. It's
Hmm.
an amazing place.
Yeah.
People are comfortable and happy. They can kind of speak their minds as long as it's respectful.
Mhm.
There's no idea that's wrong. I mean, it's a free ebb and flow kind of place. And you see the relationships begin almost immediately with people that these students wouldn't normally talk to, which then creates a collective conscience within your own classroom structure. And if you can imagine any educators out there who might be watching, if you take that classroom culture that does spread into a school,
Yeah.
okay, all of a sudden you have this sort of ripple effect is the easiest way to describe it.
Hmm.
So yeah, getting kids to sit down and actually, okay, think about the communication cycle. You have to read to understand, okay, and then you have to write it down on your character sheet. You
Yeah.
have to know where to look in order to activate. You have to listen to hear what other people are doing. The dungeon master is setting the scene. You have to listen. So
Hmm.
your brain is doing this work. And then when it comes your turn, you have to speak. Everybody else has to listen, and so on. You have to listen to them. And your brain is literally doing these circus antics, really, honestly, Luke,
Hmm.
when you look at it educationally, what the brain does when a kid is playing Dungeons and Dragons with fidelity is harder and more intensive and more, let's call it rigorous. We're going to call it rigorous. It's
Hmm.
more rigorous than any other really scholastic activity that I would ask them to do on a regular day. That's the reality.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Like when I think of games and stuff, and I think of social setting, one of the things that I think can be hard for a lot of people, and at least I know I struggle with, is this idea of strangers and small talk and talking about something. It's like, what am I going to talk about? You know what I mean? I got to make something up. We're going to talk about the weather or some stupid crap. You know what I mean? But if you introduce a game, now there's a context. There's something to do collectively, and you have this objective. It's like I don't have to just make crap up. I literally we're playing a game. There's an objective. I have something to talk about. You know what I mean? It's like, oh no, 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 you're a wizard. Your wizard's out of spell slots, dude. We need to take a short rest or something. You know what I mean? And so like you can have that social dynamic. You have something to talk about that's meaningful for everybody. You know, and especially as you start having fun in a game and you get interested in it. You know what I mean? It just has this. There's this bonding element to it. You know, that gets people who are from like diverse backgrounds and stuff, different interests. They get talking. They have fun. You know, they create these relationships and stuff, you know, and it's all around a game. Like I used to do missionary work overseas, and people down there loved to just go out to a restaurant and just eat and talk for hours. And I'm like, I hated that. Like I was like, I don't want to just spin it. It was in Spanish, which was a second language to me, and I half the time I didn't understand what they were saying because I hung out with younger people, and for whatever reason, when young people speak, they use so much slang and stuff. I can't understand them. Adults, no problem, but younger people, I get lost, dude. So like, I'm like, but every time I was hanging out with them, they just wanted to small talk and talk about things for hours. I was thinking, if we could only play a game, then this would be amazing. We could have fun and we'd have something to talk about. But they just, you know what I mean? So like, I think my point is, there's something to that about being around a game, you know, that makes it easier for that social thing to happen, you know.
It's interesting you bring that up because in teacher training, which we run every spring, teachers from the building who have my kids, like the computers teacher
Mhm.
2 years ago, I think she took the training. She had a bunch of my kiddos in her computers class, and she's like, "Hey guys, I could use your help. I'm making a character for Mr. Wells's D&D teacher training session." And like the 8 of my kids that were in her computer class at the time, because that's a rotating class, they're like, "Oh man,
Yeah.
oh man, miss," you know. And
Uh,
she noticed right away, and I have a video of her reflection, which is very profound. She said
uh-huh.
that their excitement to help her understand what it was that we were doing created
Uh-huh.
an immediate connection. So
Yeah.
that proves what it is that you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, that's really cool. That's amazing. So we were about to talk about some of these anecdotal stories. You
Oh
had this
man.
group of 4 kids and some of the changes you saw in their lives and stuff. So let's jump into that.
All right. So I was in Title One, the real deep end of the pool. I was Michelle Pfeiffer in Dangerous Minds. That was my job.
Okay.
So I'll put you there. Uh, I'm going to use their first names because these kiddos are now, man, what are they? They're in college or working. They're adults.
Hmm.
So Josue was so autistic he couldn't look anybody in the eye. He was really isolated, an isolated island. Obviously a bright kid and cheerful in his own way, but he could never express himself.
Hmm.
Dev was hyperactivity, defiance disorder, hated everybody except me, because I showed him respect right away, and
Hmm.
we had an activity that engaged him. Um, Vic was from Honduras and had made it to Houston through some odds, and Prince was the other one, and Prince was dyslexic. Okay, so Prince comes in and he's like, "Mr. Wells, I want to be a wizard." And I'm like, "Buddy, you can't read." Like you don't you literally, buddy, like I'm gentle and kind and
Uh-huh.
real with all kids, which makes me really good with all kids because I
Yeah.
tell the truth
Yeah.
and I'm honest and I'm kind and I will be on my knees to help you. Prince, you can't read. Mr. Wells, I can do it.
Yeah. He's like, all right,
All
here's the
right.
spell book. Go for it,
So here's what he did.
man.
This dyslexic kid who
Uh-huh.
could barely read a sentence at a time wrote down every spell by hand in a
Yeah.
journal to make his own spell book.
Yeah.
Okay. He could have made it digitally. He could have had it
Mm.
in, Google. He could have done, taken from the text and plopped it in.
Mm.
He wrote it out by hand because he was motivated. He was going to show me
Yeah.
that he could be a wizard. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So Deb wasn't in the group yet. Josue's teachers came to me maybe a month after Josue started playing, and they said, Josue is much more like a regular teenage boy now. And I couldn't tell if they were happy or sad about this. And I was like, I was like, yeah. And they're like, well, he's kind of like joking around a little bit. And like, he's joking when somebody says something, he's witty in a moment. And I said, dude, do you realize what a huge staple this is for an artistic child to be able to like realize social cues as they're coming up? Like, do you realize how big of a deal that is?
Yeah.
And so then Devin joined a little bit later, and this was probably a month after we were playing. And Princeton, Devin played a bard because that was Devin. And he's like, well, I'm going to cast, I don't think it was Dispel Magic on something. He's like, I don't really know what it does. And Prince is like, Prince, remember a month earlier, couldn't read.
Yeah.
He's like, I will tell you what this spell does. And he turns to his spell book and he says, Dispel Magic will reduce any effects down to, like he read it verbatim, word for word, with fidelity, without missing a beat. This kid who couldn't read before. That was amazing to me. That was one of the moments where I was like, holy crap, like there is something really powerful here. I always knew there was something, but like here I was literally watching it happen before my eyes. Josue during group would look at each person as they took their turn. He would look right in their face, right in their eyes. He usually would just look down.
Yeah.
He would look at everybody. And then as he was a fighter, I believe, he was a fighter. And every time he did something cool, you could see this pride of activation. And we can talk more about autism later. I've seen it do amazing things for kids with autism. Amazing. Yeah. And that anecdote has been repeated by others beyond me that has been reported to me. And then there was Victor. And Victor had grown up in every time. Stupid Victor. Victor grew up in Honduras, and his parents were killed in front of him with machetes. They were put down on their knees at their farm. The gang said, this farm is ours. Victor, I'm really sorry.
Oh, sorry, man. I lived in Honduras. I understand, dude.
Victor thought he was next, right? Like, dad's head, mom's head, I'm next. They said, get out of here. Don't come back. He left. He made it to Houston from Honduras. Every time this happens, he made it to live with his aunt. Victor was disengaged in school. Oh my goodness. I can't imagine why.
Yeah.
I mean, he wanted to sleep. He wanted to rest. He just didn't want anybody to bother him. He just wanted to be left alone. And anytime his teachers could get him to write anything, it was about going back to that tree in the backyard in Honduras and hanging himself where his parents had died. He wanted to be with them. God, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I actually thought about this. So Victor was so much smarter than anybody knew. These other kiddos I had to greatly help with character creation. And Victor, who was playing a barbarian, a relatively simple design, he would still, being able to move the text from the text to the character sheet is still a transfer skill that a lot of kiddos really struggle at. Even my advanced kiddos now struggle at this task. And Victor would hold up his character sheet and be like, Mr. Wells, is this right? And I was like, holy crap, Victor. Yeah, dude, you have everything exactly where it's supposed to be. Proficiencies in this and numbers transferred properly and all the things written down. And so that again, with the moment with Princeton, and I was like, just this is incredible. And Victor played, with us for about a month. And then his classroom aide comes up to me, and she was a scary lady. Jones, Miss Jones was her name. And you just could never tell how she ever felt because her face was always the same. And the face was always kind of scary. And she put her hand on my arm and she said, what did you do to Victor? And I said, well, I was having kind of a tough day, Title I, lots of tough days, breaking up fights, etc.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know, lady, we've been playing this game, D&D, whatever. And she softened for the first time I'd ever seen her soften. And she said, he's a completely changed boy.
Yeah.
He stays awake in class. He raises his hand to answer questions. He turns in assignments. And she said the most notable thing is that he goes out of his way to help other kids. Because somehow Victor realized that I was helping him and he wanted to help other kids.
Yeah.
Well, like you said before, in the platform of this game, there's this mobility, right? There's this ability to see what's happening. And Victor saw that as his opportunity to like, I'm okay. I've been through a lot. I want to help anybody else who's going through a lot. And at the end of 9th grade, he looked, because I only taught 9th grade, and then they go to the high school. He looked at me and he said, Mr. Wells, you saved my life.
Yeah.
He said, thank you so much. So it was at that moment that I knew that no parent, no administrator, no principal, nobody, no other teacher, nobody was going to stop this from happening. Right. I was going to make sure that this help could come to kids in schools across the country. I'm really sorry for my emotions. I hope everybody understands.
Oh yeah,
But
dude.
I see their little faces every time I think about it. And it's the most profound and powerful thing that I can bring to the world. And I'm not gonna not bring it to the world.
Hmm. Yeah, dude. I get it, man.
That was Houston. That was just Houston. It's gone on and on since then.
Yeah.
Stories like that are not unique.
Hmm.
It's not nearly as profound maybe as Victor's story is, but there's hundreds of them. Hundreds.
Yeah.
Oof, sorry. Wow.
No, dude, it's all right. No need to apologize, dude. It's all good. Um, so I have a few more questions in chat here. I want to grab these
Bring it.
guys. That was amazing though. Thank you for sharing, dude. So this is from Chad. They say elementary drama teacher. So he's an elementary drama teacher. I've tried implementing single TTRPGs with my students. The main struggle I have now is my students really struggle with reading. How do you adjust to very low read?
Well, the only fortunate thing about that is that the informational text is broken down super small. So if you think about the quick build in the player's handbook, for instance, the quick build allows you to take all the informational text that's there and it puts it in one place and says, this is what we suggest.
Mhm.
So for your struggling readers, this is so crazy. Wizards had no idea that they already built these things in.
Mhm.
It's different. It's called differentiation. So the quick build is a differentiation for a student who's like, I don't want to read all this. I just want to play a character. The quick build is one good place to go for Dungeons and Dragons specific. I don't know if
Mhm.
Pathfinder has a quick build or anything else.
What about pre-made character sheets? Would that be helpful
Pre-made
too?
character sheets could
Yeah.
work very well, Luke. And one of the things I've considered doing is building literally a race and a class for every single race class combination.
Hmm.
Like literally every, a
Yeah.
rogue of every race, a fighter of every race, and using some of my friends or some of my old students to help build that archive of like, oh, you want to play a dwarven rogue? Here you go. You want to play
Mhm.
a human fighter? Here you go. Pre-made characters can be very helpful. In fact, my wife just said that they had a new member join their D&D group at the high school. I teach at a middle school. My wife is at the high school, so it's kind of cool because my kids funnel from me to her then. And they're like, man, I need to play D&D. And I say, well, find Mrs. Wells.
Mhm.
She gave a kid a pre-made character, and she was a little leery that he was going to be disengaged because of all of the text that you have to actually read in order to fully
Mhm.
understand. And he wanted to join. And sometimes, as you know, one of the best ways to get a kid to be engaged in D&D is just to play.
Yeah.
So in that instance, it's like, here's the character sheet,
Mhm.
and here's your character, and here's what you have to know and go. So that can be really helpful. The low reader thing that, as a lifelong player, I'm not crazy about the basic rules that they put in starter kits. It's like
Mhm.
I can't do it because like I know all the rules, and so I'm like, well, that limits so much. But as I've read it many many times now, that is a good place to start for kids who maybe be struggling readers. And the finality is like just help them, one to one, like
Mhm.
literally just help them build their character. um that's what I do in my class. I am able to actually teach 27 seventh graders how to make a character all at the same time in one class setting. I mean,
Yeah.
it takes practice and it's not easy. I'm not going to lie to anybody and say it's easy, but I have the character sheet on the screen, and I literally lead them through like one tiny step at a time, starting with choose your race. Like all you have to do in that little box at the top of the character sheet where it's like race, class, background,
Mhm.
you're going to choose the first class period of my class year. Like I think it's the second day. Is choose your race, your class, and your background, and literally just write them down on those blanks. That's it. Like all you got to do is glean through the stuff to find out what you're interested in. And then a lot of the like stress, I guess, of
Mhm.
like knowing what all that means goes away because all I'm asking them for is three components. Well, then from those three components, I guide them through modeling. If you ever want to be a cool teacher that does cool things in your class, you have to literally model every expectation, literally do everything that you're asking your kids to do. Don't ever expect that they understand what you're trying to tell them. You have to model it. So with 27 kiddos in a classroom, I've been able to, with fidelity, many years in a row, model how to create a character all at the same time.
Mhm.
It takes a whole day. I have my kids for 90 minutes a day. That was a 90-minute process plus looking over things. So it takes time. is the reality. It just takes time and patience, real patience. And if you lose patience with your students, they're also going to lose patience with you. So just keep that in mind. And one of the pressures here, Luke, that I should mention is administrators, teachers feel like they have to like go, 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 go. I've got all this stuff to cover. I only have this 1 year to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And especially for English, our standards cycle. So like the standards will go in like spiraling loops throughout the year. And you don't need to worry about what you're covering and what you're not. What you're supposed to do is get kids to learn with, with fidelity. You're supposed to make them better people.
Yeah.
And so Dungeons and Dragons actually does that all by itself. So if it takes more time to get kids to like understand what it is that they're doing, you just need to help them maybe one-to-one.
Yeah.
You could also ask your local community people in your building, like, hey, could you come in? And if anybody who knows how to play D&D can help make a character. Struggling reading, take your time, be slow, be patient, realize that the reading they're doing is written at a 1400 Lexile. If they're reading the player's handbook, 1400 Lexile is like senior in high school, freshman in college. So a kiddo will do that, but the lower they are, the longer it'll take them. Well, growth is growth, man. In school, like you're trying to take them from here and you're trying to get them to here. Who cares how long it takes? D&D does it. Tell your administrators this will work. Give it time. And that's one of the things that we're up against as teachers is the time, right? Like we feel like we have to get through all this canon material in order to, dude, we're here to help kids. We're here to make kids better people. We're here to show them a world. We're here to get them to be, functioning adults. So whatever does it, does it.
Yeah. And D&D and all that stuff, it elevates your thinking skills, your comprehension, analysis, your application. It does all that kind of stuff. And a brain that works and can do all those things is infinitely more valuable than retaining a bunch of knowledge that you're never going to use potentially. And you're like, I don't remember the crap I learned in high school, but it made me smarter overall. It made me more capable so that now I can do other things. You know what I mean? So the idea for a lot of this isn't necessarily that I'm going to remember who all 50 or whatever presidents. We probably haven't even had 50 presidents, but it's
We've
not
had
that
more than that, Luke.
have we? Okay, cool. See,
Yeah.
I don't know, but it doesn't
It's all
matter,
good.
because I don't need to know that specific stuff to be successful in life. You know what I mean? So it's the process and the journey and like it's the conditioning of the brain, the mind. You know what I mean? So
You're talking about the activation of knowledge. It's the activation of knowledge. So knowledge is at our fingertips today.
yeah,
We don't need to memorize the presidents because we
correct.
can look it up
I look it up.
any way we want.
Right.
It's how to use the knowledge that we've been given for a larger purpose, just like you said. So you want to think about a platform that does that better than a role-playing game, a tabletop role-playing game. You have to know stuff and you have to use the stuff that you know in order to do stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it literally is an emulation of life. It is an emulation of life, which as a kid, a 12 and 13-year-old kid, think about how many, all the things you would want to do as a kid and never do, right? Like you're like, oh, I'm a good kid, so I don't do those things. And when you watch a role play, you're like, wait, why are you burning down the inn? What the heck are you doing? Dude, you guys are not allowed to be evil characters. Well, they said that, the barmaid, wouldn't let me hit on her, so I'm burning the place down. It's like, no, dude, no.
They're doing it because they can't do it in real life. That's
Correct.
why,
Correct. So thereby it's therapy, Luke.
Yeah.
By extension, that's a sense of therapy where they get to finally be somebody that they couldn't ever be. And that's sort of a story of its own. But I mean, I've got hundreds of them.
Yeah, I think part of the appeal too for D&D is the idea that you are a hero, right? Like no matter who you are in real life, no matter how crappy your life might be, how bad your job is, your family life, or whatever it is, when you're playing D&D, you're a hero. You're powerful. You know what I mean? And you're beating bad guys up and taking out monsters, and you're part of a team, and you get success after success after success, generally speaking, And there's something about that just, I don't know, it just makes you feel good because it's like, hey, dude, I might work at the bookstore delivering books. I did that for a while. You know what I mean? And that's not a really cool job, but my fighter is awesome, So, yeah.
In another year in Houston, I had a girl named Jocelyn who was dyslexic and something else. She had double label, and she became an Amazon warrior, basically a full plate, two-handed great sword fighter. And her party was kind of squishy for some reason. Like there wasn't any other muscle. And when she would walk into battle and start chopping people down, this little girl, she was probably like 4'7",
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
super small. You could see the pride embalm on her face as she's the one saving the day
Yeah.
for her homies who are like, I got one first level spell, pew pew, save me. And these instances over and over and over again show me the power that this has for kids as agency of belonging, of individuality, of community, of learning. And we have some really neat things kind of on the horizon as Wizards has really started to hook into this. I mean, we've been doing this, Luke,
Yeah.
like we've been doing this for 10 years, 9 years, I think was the first podcast I had with Wizards, which was after coming home from Klagenfurt, Austria from the European Literacy Conference.
Mm-hmm.
And 9 years, me and Wizards, 9 years, Wizards and I have been doing this. And a couple of years, 2 years ago, they started like working with a company to build little curriculum activities for like fourth through
Mm-hmm.
eighth grade, I think is what it is. And they're sort of cute little introductory things. But the fact that they're doing that at all, I think is a really cool testament to showing like this has worked. Like
Mm-hmm.
the data, the evidence, the stories, the anecdotes, parent reflections, administrator reflections, student reflections, they all show green lights ahead. And so it's a very exciting time for me personally, having had to fight this fight relatively alone. It's exciting to have seen what I've seen it do for students
Mm-hmm.
now take greater traction throughout the country and eventually, of course, the world.
Yeah. So what kind of so you mentioned this curriculum that Wizards of the Coast is working on
Yep.
and stuff, and then so what all is going on there? Like when did that start? Is it still
I,
being done? All that kind of good
yeah, no,
stuff.
yeah, it is. They're actually the demand for it is only increased, and I expect
Mm-hmm.
that will only continue to increase. The best way to explain this, if you go to the Wizards website, um, it's one of the drop downs. Yeah. I was told it's going to be put more front face, but
Mm-hmm.
there's educator resources. If you go to
Okay.
their site and search for educator resources, it shows you those curriculum tools. Also, any educator in the world can get a free starter kit, um, plus a poster and some things. So you get Dragons of Stormwreck Isle, you get a D&D poster to promote your club. It's basically club supplies, but the curriculum is actually not D&D. It's sort of like creating a monster or designing an island or sort of the story component of D&D, shell characters, without numerics, right? You don't need the dice, you don't need the value system, just sort of like, well, if you were a character in a fantasy world, what would you be? Or here are some options. So for those younger kiddos, it's sort of just a dangling hook, a carrot, if you will, to say, hey, if you're interested in this kind of thing, there's a whole world waiting for you just beyond the door. They're very
Mm-hmm.
basic. I don't use them because my kids are playing D&D.
Yeah.
Like they're doing the hardest level of the epic journey that they could be on, and these activities are beneath my kiddos. But for a teacher who's like wanting to tiptoe into it,
Mm-hmm.
those little lessons are really really neat.
Mm-hmm.
They're all written down. They're all guided. Right, ooh, in 5 minutes, a teacher could read it and understand what they were looking at.
Yeah.
And the company who is eluding me right now, but they've been asked to make more, and that's not what I plan on doing for the future of this. I have much neater ideas, but you got to
Well,
start somewhere, right?
yeah.
Like teaching kids to play D&D is hard, so you
Uh-huh.
got to start small. These little activities are
Yeah.
very neat introduction to the idea.
Yeah, so I think I found it on their site. So I'm just gonna drag this on the screen for viewers here. So
Thank
I'm
you.
I'm basically at oh hold on a second. I gotta go to this monitor center. So I'm basically this is dnd.wizards.com and I go up to gameplay drop down and then I found one that said for educators. So
Mhm.
that's probably the one. And
That's the
then
one.
educator resources, D&D class curriculum. You can download it right now. It says it has a teaching kit for grades 4 to 6 and 6 to 8. There's a D&D after school club kit that you can get right here. There's
For
a
free.
D&D Beyond educator license and stuff going on. Promote your D&D club. They have webinars, free downloadable adventures and stuff. So, yeah, it looks like there's a bunch of resources here that folks can pick up if they'd like. Yeah, that's cool.
That was a long road. It was a long road.
Yeah. So, so they got all these resources out there and stuff. Like, what part did you play in getting that implemented?
They call me the pioneer.
Uh huh. Why?
I was the dude who got on the donkey and started heading west, I guess, across the
So
country.
were they doing any of this before you
No,
started prodding
no,
them?
Luke, no, man. When I was in Houston and I saw the data come out of that, it was two groups. So I did that for two
Mhm.
years. Um, and the data, I got in line with Sam Houston State University. Went to a professional development with a lady who was talking gamification. Dr. Hannah Garber is her
Mhm.
name,
Yeah.
and she was sort of a premier agent in gamification of education. And this was a relatively new concept. Now we're talking like what 10 years ago, so it was just sort of taking traction. And I went to her PD, and as she's presenting, I'm I have more. I have more to contribute than she did. Okay, because I'm actually physically doing the research
Mhm.
with my student body. So we ended up having a great conversation after it was over, and she said, "You should come with me to Klagenfurt, Austria, as part of a panel for this thing." I
Mhm.
said, "Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun." And so I started collecting my data. I had to write my 20-page paper for presentation to the European Literacy
Uh-huh.
Conference, yada, 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 my slideshow, all the things, lots
Uh-huh.
of work. And I thought, and all of a sudden it occurred to me, like, maybe I should tell Wizards of the Coast that this is actually happening. And I was
Yeah.
like, like, I don't know. And all the thoughts went through my head. Some
Uh-huh.
PhD, some doctor, some company owner has already done this. They already know.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, what if I thought my dad's words rung in my ear? And I was like, well, what if they don't? So I
Yeah.
clicked the contact us box
Uh-huh.
in the upper right hand corner, file 13, as it's known by so many.
Mhm.
And I gave him a 3-paragraph essay. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what it's fruited, and here's where I'm going to present.
Yeah.
I never expected to hear anything back.
Mhm.
Just wanted to, here's the flag, right? Here it is.
Yeah.
Next morning, I think it was Shelly, the Shelly brand manager, emailed me back right away. This is amazing. What can we do to help?
Yeah.
That was, literally that's all it took was the research. Again, so you want to
Mhm.
do this, get some data, collect some
Right.
data, show the data. Everybody's gonna be like, whoa,
Mhm.
that's big data. And so then I got to go to Klagenfurt, and that's sort of the rest is history. That conference was amazing. Got to do a couple podcasts with Wizards, and
Mhm.
on and on it went. It's gone so far. Now I've been all over the place.
Cool. Cool. So
Tons of art.
you brought awareness to them of its
Yeah,
application to teaching
they
and
didn't
how it
know,
helps
man. I mean,
students.
like it
Yeah.
blows my mind, Luke, but they didn't know.
Yeah.
But they're not educators, so how would they know?
No, I mean, yeah, no, you don't. I mean, shoot, dude, your head's down. You're making gaming products. You know what I mean? You're running a business and crap. It's like your eyes can't be everywhere unless somebody tells you. You have no idea. Yeah. Uh huh. Yeah. That's super cool.
And all the skills and all the things that we've talked about, that was I was able to share that with them, like, and then they're like, oh yeah, like that makes a lot of sense. And now the community is sort of getting privy to this. A lot of homeschool kids play D&D. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be a thing. This is the next 10 years. You're going to see tabletop role playing games in school, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dude. I mean, that'll make school a lot more fun, man. That's for sure.
Something to look for. My kiddos on Friday, they play every Friday.
Uh-huh.
And you can see them walk in on Friday sometimes, and it's like you can tell everybody's just beat down from the week.
Yeah.
And then they look up as they get into my room, which is a warm and friendly place, and they see like game is set up,
Like, oh, it's D&D day,
and they're like,
baby.
"Oh yeah, I forgot." Or kids who say, "Mr. Wells, I was going to stay home from school today. I couldn't get out of bed. I was going to tell my mom I was sick, and then I was like, oh, no, dude, it's D&D day." And so
Yeah,
it
dude.
has worked
Man.
many times in that way.
Heck yeah, dude. I'd go to school if I were playing D&D. Are you kidding me? I mean, I was a great student. I was like 4 point, little nerdy, everything, So I was a great student, but like, it doesn't mean I was like excited to go to school,
Right?
But shoot, if I'm playing D&D, I'm excited to go to school.
Imagine being the kid in 7th grade who's being told, I meet you, you're 13,
Hmm.
you're 13, you're in my 7th grade English class. And I say, Luke, Mr. Hart, you exhibit all of the signs of a good dungeon master. Would you consider, please, taking on this very hefty role so that we can play this game in school? Because without a dungeon master, we don't have a game. And I had to pick 4 individuals this year because of a class of 27.
Yeah.
I had to find 4 kiddos who exhibited the proper, how hard is that,
What do
bro?
you
You know what I
so
mean?
so what do you look for? Like I'm assuming these are kids you probably don't know a whole lot about them, right?
No.
So,
You
like,
have to
what
make
are
the
you
decision
looking
really quick.
for when you're picking kids to be a game master?
Organization is one key factor. Being able to like discern information,
Okay.
being able to communicate information.
Uh huh.
It's a high list of skills, man. It's like it's a pretty hefty list.
Yeah.
Delegation, the ability to like manage a group and delegate, be able,
Yes.
be able to say, "Hey, dude, calm down. Hey, you shut up." Like all those things.
Yeah, those
So
soft
you're,
skills, those people management skills. Yeah. Uh huh.
so you're looking at a pretty perfect storm when it comes to a student dungeon master who's never played the game before. So keep in
Uh-huh.
mind, like all these kids are learning how to play, and I pick 4 DMs out of the group and say, "You guys are the ones that are running this."
They're like, I have
And
all the power.
but they don't even understand what that means at that
Yeah.
point, right? They don't know what that means. So we use starter set adventures, which are
Mm.
very very helpful.
Yeah.
Um, really love the Lost Mines of Phandelver
Uh
and have
huh.
been using that for seventh grade for a long, long time. And now I wish I could figure out a way to flip flop it and have my eighth graders doing Phandelver and my seventh graders doing Stormwreck Isle.
Mm.
Because I don't know if it's just the years that have passed or whatever it is, but like Stormwreck Isle is super easy, right? It's
Mm.
super duper easy to play and to run.
Mm.
Phandelver is not. Phandelver rings more true of like a regular adventure that you and I would buy and run with our friends
Mm.
by its
Mm.
nature. And that I think is why they turned it into the Shattered Obelisk, is because they realized that adventure was actually really loved by a lot of us players from days gone by. And then Icefire Peak is somewhere in sort of in the middle as sort of a filler piece where you can kind of go on
Mm.
willy-nilly adventures however you want without the story connection that the Lost Mines of Phandelver have. But what I'm noticing is it would be better for my seventh graders to run Dragon Isle, and for my eighth graders who have played to do Lost Mines of Phandelver because it's more involved. The
But
storyline
if,
itself is more involved.
why can't you flop it? Why can't you switch it? Pick a year and
Well,
switch it.
because my seventh graders are going to become my eighth graders, and my seventh graders right now are playing Lost Mines of
Right.
Phandelver.
So all you need is an intro. You need 1 year where
Yep,
the seventh graders, when they go to eighth grade, they just do something else. You know what I
it'll be
mean?
next year. Yep,
Yeah, just pick something else for them to do so that you can reset, and then next year you can do it and implement it like you want.
yep,
You
it'll be
know?
next year. And I
Yeah.
also want my eighth graders to be creating. So like I show them how to make adventures. I show them how to make spreadsheets that you can like have contents with a map that links to itself. So you want to go to point 28 on the map, you go to the contents and click it. So I also try to use it as a chance for digital literacy, right? Showing
Yeah.
them how to use all the tools that you use as a business owner
Hmm.
and manager. Those things are so important, but they're the little skills that kind of fall between the gaps in school, right?
Yeah.
Like you kind of expect that they know how to do it, but nobody ever teaches you how to do it or gives you a reason to do it. Well, here you want 28 NPCs for Phandelver, you create them and put them in a
Yeah.
spreadsheet, link them to themselves. And so skills on top of skills on top of skills on top of skills. And people who grew up playing role playing games know this stuff already, but it's not necessarily in the front of their mind why they know it.
Hmm.
As a teacher, then your job is to like, wait a minute, why do I know this?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's because I run D&D games and I have to be organized and I have to keep people engaged and I have to know where to find things and I have to help them find things and I have
That
to have
is
them
so
motivation.
crazy. Like, so I look at all the things I do, my high level of organization, people management, project management, all this kind of stuff. And the things that I just do because it makes sense to me. You know what I mean? I don't have to think hard about it. But like I was playing D&D back in like high school days and and learning these things, And so like it makes me wonder, to what extent do I owe these skills and abilities that I have now to the fact that I was a game master back in high school, running the game and stuff. You know what I mean? And I had to like keep track of my campaign, which forced a certain level of organization and stuff like that. So that's
I
super
can tell you, you
interesting.
probably owe more to it than you think. In the brain, let's talk brain science for a
Mhm.
minute, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons uses all parts of the brain, left and right hemispheres, and the middle that connects them. So you have the creative element, which is the left brain. Um, no, the right brain. Yep, the right brain, the creative element, the theoretical component, the dark matter, the faster than light speed, the things that we don't know, the creative agency is in the right. And then in the left is the tactical, is the mathematical, is the probabilical, the things that you can conceive. And Dungeons and Dragons obviously then uses both parts of the brain, but there's a part in the middle of the brain that connects the two. And So as a student then playing D&D, or as a kid playing D&D, you had to theorize and then activate. So you
Mhm.
had to like think it up. Okay, I'm going to
Yeah.
have them face a beholder. Okay, well,
Mhm.
where do I want that beholder to
Yep.
be? And you're very, very good at this with all the things that I've seen, many of the things I've seen you do. You do this so automatically, Luke. So the kiddos then are like, okay, beholder, I have to read the stats. I got to imagine the thing. And then, okay, now I need to read the stats and figure out exactly how this is going to work. And then in
Mhm.
the middle of the brain is the connection of the two pieces that actually makes it work. And so in
Yeah.
students, what you have in the beginning of that between the two hemispheres of the brain is a minimum maintenance road. It's a tiny little dirt deer trail. We'll call it a deer
Mhm.
trail. You're from Wisconsin. You can appreciate a
Mhm.
deer trail. So here they're connecting these two pieces of their brain for the first time. And pretty soon the myelin sheath of that little minimum maintenance road becomes a gravel road. Somebody dumps some gravel on it. And
Yeah.
then it's like, hey, let's put some tar on this road. It's like, hey, we could use another lane here. Oh, hey, well, we lay a super highway here, and now we have two lanes on both
Right.
sides. Now we have an
So
interstate highway. That's what the brain actually does through the use of a fidelic use of a
mhm.
tabletop role playing game, and what that can bring to a classroom. It's not just playing this game on Fridays that makes my kids so smart. It's the
Mhm.
fact that I've been playing D&D my whole life, and it's in my classroom as a structure. My kids have great agency. They have great choice. They're when it comes to a big project, I'll ask them like, okay, how many things do you think we need? How many days do you think it should take? Right. And those sorts of things. But what you get then is a whole brain usage of a student, where normal school is like, read this worksheet, fill in the line, circle ABC at the end and turn it in, and I'll give you a score. And that's school for too many kids. That's how you and I grew up.
Yeah.
That stuff needs to end. That's not real learning. It doesn't help anybody. These kids need to be shown how to be like full grown people. And I don't know the last time about you, but I haven't taken a multiple choice test in a really long time as an
Dude,
adult.
no, dude, it's stupid. Like, it's just not useful at all. Like, I don't use, like, as an adult, what I need to be able to do is I need to know what my objective is. Okay. If I have to do something, let's say for my business, I need to know what my objective is. And then it's like, okay, I have no idea how to do that. Okay, I need to go find the information for how to do it. Google, right, and stuff. And I find maybe books, I find the information, It's like, okay, I found the information. Great. Now I have to understand the information. I have to like analyze it, you know what I mean? And then I have to apply it so that I can implement it to get that working for my business, And then the next thing that I know, I have a website going for my business and I had no idea how to do websites, say a month before, and now we have one. You know what I mean? And so that's the type of thing you do in the real world. And like one of my some of my first real jobs, like when I first was doing like technical writing, for instance, like I didn't know how to do half of the stuff they wanted me to do. You have to learn how to do it. You have to go out and do a little bit of research and reading, and just implement it and learn and do it. You know what I mean? Like they didn't teach you that crap in school. You have to like figure that crap out. And so I think what you were saying with the two parts of the brain, it's like you have this creative aspect of like, oh, cool, this awesome adventure idea. But it's like that does you no good because you have to run that adventure at a game table. So now how do I take this cool idea and implement it like logistically, and how do I make it work? How do I turn it into this actual game where it's like, there's the introduction and then there's like some escalating points. And so there's this rising action and then there's this final confrontation and then there's this, and how do you implement all of these game mechanics? How do I, so it's like cool idea, but then you have to implement it. And so I think that's like the pathway, right? You're talking about
Right.
that with using over and over again, you can go from having ideas to actually being able to implement it, and then that carries over into real life because like you might be doing a thing like you got your first job doing like X thing, and you have an idea for something, and then you got to figure out how to implement it, and then the
You
D
got it
and D
exactly.
the D and D pathway helps you to figure that out because you've done it so much before.
You
You know,
re-articulated that beautifully, Luke. You got it exactly. That's exactly what it is
yeah.
this fantasy world that they get to live in as characters then emulates into their real life, where they're like, just like me with education, where I'm like, wait a minute, this is all really familiar. The students do the same thing. They're like, oh, I did that. I was a dungeon master for my group. I know exactly what to do. I know, we need to work together. We need to get ideas from everybody. And then again, the social aspect of it, right? Like in your job, you need to count on people for their abilities.
Hmm.
And so if you are a game player of a tabletop role playing game in school, like in my classroom, you're going to quickly be able to look around at the peers that you have at your workplace and be like, you, and you come with me. Like it's so obvious. So really
Uh-huh.
neat. I'm glad that you can identify those things and bring that to the heart. That's really,
Yeah.
really perfect.
So we have some more questions here. I'm kind of backlogged on the questions, but we're gonna get some
Bring it,
here.
Luke. Bring it.
We have, where was that guy? I just saw him. La 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 la. Oh, I scrolled. Okay, so it says, what you are talking about describes my school. An issue I have is over a week, I see every student in the school. Classes of 15 to 20, K through 5. I could do with small groups. How would I with all the class? So like I think what they're trying to say is how can they run D&D with the entire class? I think is what they're asking.
If you have more than what was the class size? Did they
It's
list the class
15,
size?
15 to 20. And it's kindergarten through 5th grade.
I've heard of people have done this. People that I've come into contact have done this. Some of them say they take away the dice and they present a scenario
Mhm.
that like you would have an adventure in like slides or PowerPoint or whatever, and you'd have that on the screen and you'd say, you come to the door. What do you do? The door is locked, you know, and you take the dice away and the kids could do like little journal writing activities and you
Mm.
like have a random deck of cards and you say, okay, Timmy, what do you want to do to get through the door? That sort of thing has worked. Playing D&D with large groups of kids is hard. You're going to get a disengaged kid here and there. Your bottom 10% is going to fall away very quickly, though my experience says that 10% may actually be a different 10% than usually falls away.
Mhm.
Um, as usually the resistant kid is the most excited for something new.
Yeah, cuz
Playing
they're like I hate school and finally they're
right,
playing a cool game. They're like, "Oh, I'm in, dude."
correct.
Yeah.
Uh, Playing large group takes great patience. Um, Man, peers of mine from conferences have told me about it, and their strategies are sort of eluding me.
Mhm.
The idea would be don't focus on the rules, focus on the story,
Right.
focus on what it is that you're doing for the purpose that you're doing it. You want to run a whole group, you want to be a dungeon master for a whole group. You want every kid to be verified, right? Validated. So you got 15 kiddos. So in any given scenario, like how do you get to each one of them to validate them? Well, you can't. So then, what do you do? What's the point? One of the reasons I got into do this is because I always knew why I was doing it, right? Like this
Mhm.
is what this is going to give these kids. Step back.
Mhm.
Step way back. Keep going back. But if you know what you're doing and why you're doing it, then it should become clearer to you as a teacher how to do what it is that you're doing. I know that really sucks. And you don't, that's not what you want to hear. You want to hear some concrete answer like, here's how you run D&D for 20 kids.
No, but there it's like look, how do you jump to the moon, dude? Roll a nat
Right.
20? It's like, yeah, okay.
I would say
Yeah.
think about it almost cinematically. Does that
Mhm.
make sense? If you think about it cinematically, you want
Yeah.
these kids to share in the storyline and the joy that it is to play these games together. Forget about rule systems, forget about dice. Dice are fun to roll, so you can still keep the dice as like don't even add anything to it. Just roll the dice and like who succeeded and who failed and what does that look like? And it's not
Mhm.
going to be perfect, but what you're looking at is the activation of student agency. They want to
Right.
be excited about learning. They want to care about what they're doing, but school can stink so much in the mire of what it's become and what it has been that like you add a d20 to their life and it might literally change their life. We roll initiative in my classroom for all kinds of things. Presentations. Okay, it's presentation day. Everybody pull out your d20s. Roll. Okay, who's highest, who's lowest, and that's
Yeah.
the order. That's how we determine
Yeah.
the order that they present in. So little things like that can be cool for
Mhm.
classrooms. But like you think about it, I guess the best thing I can think of is to say think about it cinematically, and that
Right.
you're like living a movie together in your classroom. You're going to have kids who really activate, really highly and want to be really participant,
Mhm.
and then other kids who try to fall away. I have a random deck of all the kiddos, in cards that I can pull from. That would be what I would suggest for that kind of role playing scenario as a whole class.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I get the idea. You essentially you want to simplify it a lot because we're dealing with kindergarten through 5th grade. So, not a full-blown character sheet. Maybe all you do is write on the board like the different races and classes you can choose and a few weapons, and then you tell your kids, okay, pick your race, pick your class, and pick a weapon from the board. Okay, so I am a half orc wizard, and I picked fireball. Okay, cool. And then you tell your story, and then you're like, okay, you guys go into a room, and there are a bunch of goblins, and they're all menacing you with swords. What do you do? And the kid's like, I do fireball. Cool. And then you could just be like, roll a d20. And they roll it, and they're like, it's a 5. Ooh, your fireball goes off, and it takes off a couple goblins, but it also gets some of your friends. All of their eyebrows are singed. Okay, that's it. And you're just free forming it. It's very, very simple. You're not really following the rules. You're just kind of like, because at that age level, like, don't worry about it. But the
Right.
idea is to get them thinking a little bit about it and participating and having fun, and then exercising that decision making and stuff. And I think that, so I think I understand what you're saying. It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's not a great answer, right? It's just that's a difficult scenario.
It's all right. You're in a live stream, dude. You don't got time to think and figure it all out. You get put on the spot. Uh, let's see. I got some more questions here. There's a bunch down here. Somebody says, "Dude, I love this. I'm using D&D elements to help me teach history more effectively. Kids who hated history or struggled caring about the content have come alive with the gamification of my class." Oh, that's cool. Okay, let's talk gamification then. So,
Okay.
you had mentioned this before. So, in what ways can teachers like okay, so you got D&D and playing D&D. We've talked about that. But like how could you just apply gamification concepts in general to the classroom?
Okay, so gamification elements are like things like classroom economy. You do good things in school, you're a good kid, you like do what you're supposed to do, you get points to spend on things. That's classroom economy as a gamification element. That's one of the
Okay.
rudimentary elements of gamification. When I was at Games for Change in New York City, man, this guy, and I wish I remembered his name right now, he created a Revolutionary War 5th edition booklet. Like it's a player's handbook for the Revolutionary War using 5th edition rules.
Mm-hmm.
So he took out all of the weapons, all the spells, everything is per history. You can literally play
Yeah.
D&D as a Revolutionary War character. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
That's an element of gamification, although you're like playing the game in school. So gamification is any way in which you make your classroom into a game.
Okay.
Um, the easiest example I can give of this right now for my own self is the Ready Player One challenge. My kiddos read Ready Player One. They have a hunt. They do a hunt for Halliday's Easter egg where they have to watch old movies, play old games, listen to old music, and read a book from one of the canon authors that's on this huge list of media. And they accrue points by doing this. That's a really great
Mm-hmm.
example of gamification. We're
Okay.
reading the book and we're playing the book
Mm-hmm.
at the same time. The leader gets a really cool prize. Gamification is any game element you can put into your room that makes a kid want to do something. So competition or
Mm-hmm.
collaboration or whatever, those all come from gamified elements. And actually, honestly, Dungeons and Dragons is literally at the core of all of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have a super chat. Thank you, Genderland Games. They say if you can share your data with us, it would be very helpful to all of us looking to follow in your footsteps. So you'd mentioned data that you have. Is there a way that folks can get their hands on what you have? Because you mentioned we've talked about convincing administrators and stuff to let you try this, and showing them data is one of the ways. Well, I imagine lots of folks don't have data, right? But if
Right.
they can get their hands on your data, that would probably help them.
Yeah. If you just email me at kade.wells@buildingheroes.com, I will take the data and send it to you. It should be mentioned that that data is using standardized state assessments,
Okay.
not something I built, not something I made. This is this test that all the kids take across it's NWEA is the test. Lots of states use it as their sort of beginning, middle, and end of year assessment. And yeah, I'm happy to send anybody data that wants to reach out to me. I'm technologically insufficient is become well known to me, and in this
Uh-huh.
field, it's unfortunate, and I just need more help. It's just me. It's just me. Literally just me.
Yeah.
Um, Having spearheaded this whole campaign and helped clue in wizards and still teaching kiddos and building stuff and still wanting to play D&D with friends and stuff,
Hmm.
it's just me. And so website and things future, sure, but if you need that data to help support you getting the kids to play D&D in your school, I will absolutely respond to you and give you that data. That data was compiled by Dr. Michael Amelins, who is the head of federal programs for my district here in Harrisburg, South Dakota. So it's not like some slouch just put some numbers together. This is like big cheese, cracked the numbers and saw how they compared. And you also get the comparison numbers of the regular cohorts who didn't have me, apples to apples, if you will. And so apples to apples, that line graph just blows it out of the water. Now, I should say that that's not just using D&D. That's because I've been a lifelong player of D&D and my classroom emulates that concept. So like it's warm, it's friendly, it's engaging, it's dynamic, it's centered upon student growth. All the things that I told you about what I learned in college becoming a teacher, where I was like, wait a minute, this is all in D&D. Well, I made that into my classroom, Luke. And then D&D on Fridays ends up being the culmination of that synthesis, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And we have Kade's email address down in the description of this video too, so you guys can reach out to him and stuff. Now, do you have a website at all, Kade?
Yeah, it's buildingheroes.com, but it's like a stupid bit.ly. It's a Google domain, and now that they've moved into Squarespace, I have plans to actually make a decent website. But if you want to, I mean, reaching out to me, man, I will write anybody. I really want to help. My YouTube channel is cringy, but just designed to help teachers who have the questions that teachers will have. Like, man, I don't know what to do. My anecdotal reflections of everything I've done is there. But if you want to email me, I will email you back. That's reality. And then I will make a website. I realize it's rather pathetic to not have one, but it's just one more thing. And when you're talking about grading papers and helping kids and having a life and family and stuff and not having any
you don't have to make any excuses, dude. It's all
well,
good.
it bothers me.
It's all good. So I bet you that we have in the audience people who know how to do that crap. So if anybody wants to give him a hand, email him. Because really, like we're talking, it could be something really simple where it's just like a little website that has a link to some of the data. You know, it could be data in like a Google Drive and a Google Sheet or something that just makes it handy for people. So, you know, if anybody wants to give him a hand, email him. You know, maybe you get some people, because like, you know, D&D people, like there's lots of people that are in IT that like play D&D. Like the average person in IT, there's like a high probability they play D&D. There is. It's crazy, you know.
I mean, I have a Google domain, and it's you know, buildingheroes.com is what it's called, but I don't think it's searchable because Google domains are kind of dumb that way. I was trying to keep it as inexpensive as possible for a while. And that was pre Wizards work, right? And things have gotten a lot better for me, but it's like time efficacy, right? Like life management, like
yeah. It's I get it, dude. You're talking to a busy dude. I totally understand, man. Yeah. All right, cool. So we got some more questions here. Let's see. There was a good one. Where was that one about the Okay, here we go. How would you pitch a D&D club at a Christian school where satanic panic might be an issue? Now, before you answer that question, I want to tell you that I mentioned before I was a missionary down in Central America for 4 years. And I was a teacher at a Christian school, and I tried to start playing D&D with some of my friends down there, and I was told to stop because reasons, right? And I was like, oh, geez. And so I was like, all right, fine. I went and played online instead of playing in person because they're like, you can't do this. So how would you approach that, dude?
Punch everybody in the throat.
There you go.
I mean, in some ways, my cohort, in some ways where I'm at right now is very much a Christian school without being one. Okay. In social studies, they are taught theology, right? In social studies across the globe, like, okay, you're learning world history. What's one of the components of world history for every culture?
Sure. Religion. Yeah.
So that's how they built the religions in Dungeons and Dragons, is through the cultural history of all the religions of all of the planet of Earth. So framing it to parents and saying this is not the anti-worship of Christ. This is the understanding of other religious dogmas from around the world throughout history, represented in a fantasy world where kids can play. You can also frame the divinity of good and evil. You do like what Tolkien did. You have the good guys and you have the enemy. That's it.
Mhm.
That's a really easy pantheon. So if you're going to create a cleric in that world, well, you worship the one. You worship Bahamut, the one, the creator god, the one that does all things. And he might have angels. So you take all the sub deities of good and you turn them into angels.
Mhm.
As an example, you take the evil god, Hermides, or no, Hermes, right? Hermes?
Hermes is the messenger god.
No, who's the evil one?
Hades, Hades.
Hades. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hades. You take Hades and make him Lucifer, and all the other evil deities are the evil
Mm.
angels. And if you frame it in that way, those parents who have hyperbolic reactions to such things, they might be like, oh, so my kid is going to be playing for an agency of God.
Yeah.
Yes, your student will be playing for an agency of God. That's has worked in conversations in the past where it's
Mhm.
like, look, also it's just a story. It's just a story. They're not
Yeah.
learning how to do rituals.
No.
Okay. They're not
Yeah.
learning how to do rituals. It's like a button on a controller. They learn a spell, it's a button on the controller that
And
they use
dude, and
during
that
gameplay.
and that's kids that are playing video games are being exposed to far worse things than any D&D game is ever going to expose them to. And I
Dude, social
think
media.
social media is even worse. And I think that part of the part of the satanic panic thing is founded in a complete misconception
It is.
about what D&D is. Like they think that you're devil worshipping and stuff, and it's like no. You're the good guys. You're killing the devils. You're killing the evil people. Like you're a hero. You're a force of good in the world. So I think that there's just this misconception of it, and I think that part of it is trying to speak truth to that and abolish that misconception. You know what I mean?
One of the things, Luke, that I've done in the past to help with this very same thing is to ask the parent to come in, the resistant parent to come in and hand them a player's handbook and say, show me the devil. Find it.
Yeah.
Show me. Like, here's a character sheet. Here's the player's handbook. I'd love to help you make a character, which is literally exactly what I've asked your kiddo to do. Like, let's just make a character. Let's talk about this. Like, you're afraid of it. I get it. Okay. Here's the book. Here is the book that you've never seen, you've never held, you've never read, and you're coming with this preconceived ignorance is what it is. It's ignorance is what it is. Let's just call it what it is.
Mhm.
It's ignorance. Our job as educators is to help with that ignorance. We do it with students every day. We do it with parents all the time. We do it with administrators more than rarely. Okay.
Mhm.
So one of the ways that I've seen this be defeated is give them a character sheet and give them player's handbook and say, do you think you could do this by yourself? Do you think you could make this character all by yourself? Okay, that's one thing, just to show them the cognitive level of
Yeah.
thinking that kids have to do in order to
Mhm.
make a character. And then just open the book and let them start looking at the art and the charts and the graphs, etc. One of the biggest things that comes from the satanic panic is idol worship. Like we saw this in the Harry Potter days, where kids were like consuming Harry Potter but wouldn't read their Bible.
Mhm.
And it's like it's just a story. The reason they're reading it is because it excites them, and they're learning
Yeah.
their own thing by reading Harry Potter. And I guess like trying to tread carefully here. If one's religious institution is so fragile that Harry Potter can destroy it, I would rethink my entire life.
Mhm.
Have them make a character, show the parent the player's handbook, give them a character sheet, make a character with them, and then maybe role play through a scenario where they walk into town. You walk into town, there's a building on fire. Somebody comes up to you and says, hey, stranger, our library is on fire. We need your help. Will you take this bucket? Do you take the bucket?
Yeah.
You can frame it in such a way. But I've had to do that with parents in the past. And usually it's just like, here's the text that really solves a lot of things
Yeah.
because they've never seen it before.
I think part of the stigma is just calling it D&D too. You know what I mean? Because that a lot of the stigma is attached to D&D. So
It is.
perhaps you don't introduce it as we're playing D&D in our game. You say we're playing Pathfinder in our game, or we're playing Castles and Crusades, or we're playing Dungeon Crawl Classic, or GURPS, or whatever. Or you could just say we're going to play a role-playing game.
That's what we do.
You just don't call it D&D. Like, if you know that there's a stigma attached to a specific word and that people get dumb ideas in their heads when they hear a word because of, ignorance, or it's not, sometimes it's ignorance, but a lot of times too, it's because other people are misinformed and they're just telling them bullcrap, and then they
Right.
believe the bullcrap. So
Yep.
don't use that word. Like, for instance, if I got shut down when I was trying to run D&D, I 100% guarantee you, if I had never told them the name of that game, no issues whatsoever, because there's no problem. You're just like, oh, you're just got swords and stuff and you're fighting monsters. Who cares? You know what I mean? They wouldn't care. But because they heard the word D&D, they're like, oh, hold on a second. That's bad, right? So you just don't use that word. And don't bring in D&D books, get a different book. Do Dungeon Crawl Classics.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
That's true. You bring up a really good point, Luke. For D&D was the popular tool of the time, and that's why they got the stigma. Video games have absorbed most of that, but for a Christian school that's focused in that way, use Star Wars maybe. Like
Sure.
Star Wars is a pretty
Yeah.
cool game. It's kind of, I don't know, it's not easy, super easy to learn, but if you're learning any role playing game, it's not easy.
Right.
So
Hmm.
a lot of parents of Christian values systems are going to appreciate Star Wars because they grew up with it
Hmm.
and understand it as literally a story.
Yeah.
Whereas, so that's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah. Yeah. So we had a super chat from Lord Alethorn. Thank you, dude. I appreciate that. Says, how do you justify to school administrators and parents supporting D&D in school because it deals with violence, adult themes, magic, and occult topics? How does this person approach their local high school principal to promote D&D?
Punch everybody in the throat.
Okay.
I mean, dude, look, everybody's offended by something. Okay. Like you teach 100 people to do something, and one person is going to be like, no, I hate you and I hope you die.
Hmm.
So, those what, four things that you brought up: violence, adult themes. Okay. So, if we're talking about helping kids prepare for the world, do you not want them to toy around with adult themes, flirting with the barmaid? Do you not want them to figure out how to defend themselves if they should have to, and when to do so, and with what level of force to apply? With themes of the occult, how to identify when something feels funny in their own personal life, when it's like, maybe I shouldn't be friends with this person because something feels a little weird about them.
Hmm.
This is what I'm saying. You use this game as a tool to show them the veil of life that they're going to have to live. And so, how do you deal with administrators? You say this game can be practice under observation,
Hmm.
where I'm there listening and watching what they do. Where if something gets out of hand, I can say, "Do you think that's appropriate to do at school? Do you think that that's something that your character should be doing right now?" And help them frame themselves as a growing person for the world that they're going to be launched into that cares nothing about them. So those instances of a cult, like, give me a break. Like, we're about to get into Nazi Germany here in seventh grade literature. You want to talk about a cult? Like, we're reading about the Holocaust. There's nothing worse on this planet that I can think of in recent history than reading about babies being thrown from the backs of trucks being used as machine gun practice for Nazis. Okay.
Hmm.
So, like, a kid learning how to cast a spell as a wizard seems like a far cry from that, which actually did happen.
Right.
Um, those are the things that I go to in these fights that I've had. I call them fights because they literally almost have been.
Hmm.
I call them fights because they have been, and they are doable. They're winnable. You do have to know how to approach them, but what you're helping a kid do is practice life. You can't do this in any other way. I've been a teacher for 10 years. I've known lots and lots of teachers. I've been at conferences all over the place. This is one of the only things that I've seen that you can actually practice being a person in life and realize those drawbacks and successes the way that we do as human beings, and not suffer them as if you were a human being actually doing it. Like,
Yeah.
you stole a loaf of bread, character loses an arm. Okay, well, now my character's one-handed. That's a pretty powerful lesson when you boil it down
No
into
steal.
reality.
Yeah. Um, and the interesting thing too is that, like, parents might be, saying we don't want these themes and stuff like that, but like, okay, are these same parents not allowing their kids to play any video games? Are they banning them from the internet? Are they also banning them from social media? Are they making sure they don't have phones. Maybe they have like a basic flip phone with no internet connection. Like, if they're not taking steps to insulate them from all of those different things, their kids are being exposed daily to violence, very adult themes at a very young age. Okay, occult and magic is nothing compared to the stuff they're gonna find on the internet and all of these, so it's like, I feel like it's a silly argument to level against D&D because their kids are engrossed in a lot worse things than that game, and that game has the potential, according to the data and the research and experience, to help kids in amazing ways. And so it's like it's like, it's like you have like machine guns aimed at kids, but you're not worried about that. You're worried about the fact that they don't have any shoes on and their feet are going to get cold. It's like, why don't we not worry about their feet getting cold? Like, we have machine guns, so maybe we just let their feet get cold so they learn to put shoes on before they go outside, and then, so I don't know. It just seems like a silly argument when you consider all the other things that kids are actually involved in on the day to day.
Luke, that's a really good analogy. And fear drives a lot of people. Fear. Like a lot of people just live in fear of the unknown, fear of the uncertain. And living in fear is no way to live a life. I would say live in enlightenment. If you're afraid of something, learn why you're afraid of it. I have never had a parent. I've had lots of resistant parents, bro. Lots over the years. I've never had a resistant parent come to me where I said, here's the game, here's what they do, here's why it's good, here's what they'll get. I've never had it go wrong. I
Yeah.
mean, and I've had plenty of possibilities for it to go wrong. It never has.
So once you show them what it actually is, and they
Right.
learn about it, they're like, oh, this isn't that big of a deal. What the heck? Who
No big
cares?
deal.
It's that they have these like wrong concepts in their head, and they just
Preconceived
don't know, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. So you just
Got another
basically
one?
you just get the parents all there. You have a parents' night where all the parents come in and you just explain it to them, and then you're good
Actually,
to go.
bud, I have a cool story. There's this
Uh-huh.
guy who does voices against cancer here in South Dakota. He's a maxillofacial surgeon who brings all these movie stars here to do signings for cancer and creates this big event here in Sioux Falls. And he puts these people up in his guest house. This dude lives in a castle.
Yeah.
Okay, lives in a castle. And I was kind of cheesing out as I'm walking up to his house because my wife was part of the cancer event. Um, oh man, Bo-Katan, whose name is actually, anyway, she was one of the many Star Wars people that are there. And this guy's got a castle, and I'm walking up and I'm kind of mad because this guy lives in a castle and I don't. And then it dawns on me, what kind of rich nerd is going to live in a castle? And I was like, this guy is root D&D nerd, no doubt. There's bronze lions 12 feet tall on either side. Okay, anyway, so I go in and I meet this guy and I shake his hand and I said, you grew up playing D&D? And he's like, oh man. So I told him about what I do and what I've been doing. And he was like, holy crap. And you could see him go back in time. And he's one of the people that I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to have him come in and talk to parents and my cohort of students and say, I'm a rich maxillofacial surgeon who lives in a castle, and Dungeons and Dragons was one of the reasons that happened. And that is true based upon his story. And the more stories I collect as I go through conferences and stuff, that story becomes more and more common everywhere I go. And so I use people that have succeeded at great lengths as a, hey, by the way, this guy used to be your student when they were 12.
Yeah, that's crazy, dude.
He's a neat guy.
My wife and I are going to a castle in January. Like, I'm thinking of doing like a little miniature like gaming convention where I like have like 5 people that will come play D&D with me in a castle. And so I'm going to scope out the castle in January to see what it's like. It's a few hours from where I live. So anyway, but I'm gonna go check out a castle.
That'd be LARPing, bro.
No, we're not gonna be LARPing. It'll just be D&D, but it's the atmosphere. I want like the atmosphere of playing in the castle. You know what I mean? So
one time, way back when in high school, my friends and I were gonna play some Vampire the Masquerade, which is a super fun game. By the way, mechanically, for kids learning to play tabletop role-playing games, that success failure dice roll system where you have numbers of dice and a success number where you need 3 or 5 successes or whatever. that's just a bullet that you fill in on your character sheet. So those types of games that Star Wars, old Star Wars used to be a
Yeah.
D6 game of the same sort of method. Those games are really, really great to learn how to play role-playing games. Anyway,
Hmm.
we went to this abandoned house that I knew about near my farm, and we were going to play some vampire. And we go out to this shady grove late at night, and we're like, oh yeah, we're going to do this story. And we get in there, and we're so damn afraid of everything that moved or squawked. Like we must have been there for maybe 30 minutes, and we're like, all four of us were like, let's maybe just not, let's get out of here. That was our attempt for environmental, role playing as this abandoned house, play vampire. Nope, let's go.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Hopefully that doesn't happen to you at the castle.
Somebody in chat's asking what castle it is. It's Ravenwood Castle. It's in Ohio. So that's the one I'm going to be scoping out. It looks really cool. So they actually do gaming conventions there too. So anyway, it looks really cool. I had another one in chat. Let's see, where was that? Do you take any measures to make sure students don't fall into addictive or escapism patterns? That's the biggest concern I have with especially small kids playing RPGs.
Small kids.
Or addictive or escapism patterns. So they get addicted to it, or they're using it to escape from, and not potentially not dealing with the realities of life, I would presume.
The kids that are going to be prone to that will be exhibiting it already. So they have already found whatever way it is that they want to escape that's probably not healthy.
Mm.
The best, I mean, dude, holy smokes. My friend TJ, yeah, they're already going to be escapist, right? They're already going to be obsessive. They're doing whatever they can to help their brain cool. That's what that does is they found.
Yeah, they're just doing something that's unhealthy. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, and as they get older, that's drugs and alcohol. I mean, that's the clear path, right? Malfeasance, crime, robbery, vandalism, whatever. That starts really young. So I would say, don't worry about it. The best thing you could do is have them in a basement playing D&D with D&D buddies, because those buddies are all good. That's one of the things I tell my students every year. You may never play this game again, but there will come a time where you meet somebody where you learn they play D&D, and you know for some reason in the back of your mind that you can trust them on the most basic level for this particular reason. So I would say, yes, will they obsess about it? Yes. But that obsession actually might save their life, because that means they're not obsessing about, I don't know, an opiate or pick a thing, right? So it's about guiding that student towards an obsession that is at least healthy, because my buddies of 24 years, like, we're all obsessed about D&D. Luke Hart here is obsessed with D&D, and all of his buddies and everybody, right? So we've learned, I had to learn that myself, is like, yeah, I'm obsessive compulsive, and this game saved my life for sure. Absolutely saved my life. I could have been in dead or in jail 100 times, and D&D, being in a basement with homies that were like so cool and nerdy and sweet, and then the poets and artists and musicians that kind of were on the fringe of our little nerdism. That's who I want my son to hang out with.
Yeah.
I don't want my son to hang out with people who are going to haze him to be on a sports team or whatever. So in terms of the fear, again, we're talking about fear. Like, don't worry about the obsession. Try to focus the obsession so that kid learns and becomes this positive force. And then he might be like Luke Hart, running his own business someday, because he learned how to play D&D instead of, whatever else it was that he's going to decide to do without guidance. So guidance, give them the guidance and show them. I hope that makes sense.
Oh yeah, it's like kids who are prone to those things will find something to escape to, something to be addicted to. So the idea is give them something healthy to be addicted to escape to, as opposed to something unhealthy. Like I do gaming and stuff, and you go out with your friends for 4 hours, usually once a week at least, and you're out gaming and stuff, and I'll tell my wife, it's like, hey, other guys are out drinking and doing crazy, stupid stuff. What am I doing? I'm in my basement with my friends, or I go to a friend's house and play D&D. Like, would you rather have me going out to a club or doing stupid crap? No, dude. Playing a D&D game is definitely preferable to what I could have been doing. You know what I mean?
That's a
So
sentiment shared by my entire friend group's wives. All of them are
yeah.
like, oh, well, they're not, they're not doing XYZ. We know exactly where they are
Exactly.
and
And
exactly.
you know, he might spend $100 a couple times a year on this D&D Kickstarter that he really wants to get. But I'll tell you what, if he were going out drinking and clubbing, he'd be spending $100 every single time, if not
Yep.
more. So it's like it's all right. It's pretty good.
Yeah, manage the obsession. Don't deny the fact that the compulsion is there. The compulsion will not go away. It will probably never ever go away.
Mhm.
Manage the compulsion, give the kids something positive to focus the compulsion on. Man, I got a lot of stories about that. Maybe the next time I can tell some of those.
Yeah, we're getting low. By the way, folks, we are going to be wrapping up soon, and we do have a giveaway going on. We'll be giving away a copy of Into the Fae. It's a level 1 to 5 adventure module for D&D 5th edition. And or you can get just DM Lair store credit and get any resource you want off from our store as well. So we'll be drawing the winner to that giveaway at the very end of the live stream. So there should have been lots of links in chat, but I will throw one down there right now just in case, so you guys can get in on that. And
Luke, is there any chance I could hit the loo real quick?
yeah, dude, go for it, man.
I'll
Go
be
for
really
it.
fast.
Yeah.
It's becoming important.
Absolutely.
Thanks, bud.
Yep.
I'll leave you the chair as a view there. There you go. Chair, Christmas tree.
All right,
I'll be
cool. I'll go to full screen until he gets back. All right, sweet. So, did the giveaway link go through? Sweet. Yeah, absolutely, Junie. Happy to help, dude. All right, let's see. I'm gonna go through and see if we got any other things going on here. Chicken says, I run a D&D club for my home-educated kids. It's so empowering. Everyone wants to DM. We don't have enough players. That is cool. You got more people that want to DM. A lot of times people don't want to be the game master, right? They just want to be players, but that's cool that everyone wants to DM. We play fast and loose. Emphasis is on improv and creativity. Rules are secondary. Yeah, that's awesome. Let's see what else we got going on here. We did that one. A lot of these are questions for Cade, so I can't really do them. Ooh, do your students struggle much with the math in the games? Ooh, that's a good question for him. I mean, the interesting thing is a lot of the math is just adding and subtracting. So that's probably a pretty low level order of math. So I imagine that's probably, if you're going to use math, that's probably the easier way to go than having to do more complex stuff, for sure. My friends and I would play D&D at a 24-hour restaurant. As long as we brought something every few hours, it was fun. Dude, I would get really fat like if I just played D&D at a restaurant. I feel like like it's bad enough on my D&D nights where I have like pizza and snacks down here. If I were like at a restaurant, man, I don't know, that might be a problem for me. I use the Pythagorean theorem more playing D&D than I ever did since high school. Dude, I don't do that. Like, we did this, so it'll come up like, right, somebody wants to go diagonally, or you're like dealing with like 3 dimensions and stuff, and they're like, well, the monster's flying here and we're here, so, what's the hypotenuse of that triangle? And it's like, no. It's 20 feet, dude. We're not doing that. But that's cool if people want to do that. I just don't do that. We'll laugh about that sometimes at our group. We started playing Pathfinder 2, and you're supposed to, when you're moving diagonally, you're supposed to count like, the first diagonal movement is just 1, but the next one is like counts as like 2 squares, and such. And we were like, that's too complicated. So we were just like, we'll just do 1 square and call it a day. So yeah, I try to keep the math as simple as possible. That's why I love using average damage, because I don't have to add dice together.
Me too.
Stuff. Yeah.
I tell all my kiddos, don't worry about rolling dice. You got 5 monsters. They've got a character. Do 5. You take 5 damage.
Mm-hmm.
Speeds things up so much.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Like when I started using average damage in my 5th edition games, it was really nice. And I think that's one of the things I miss. I play Pathfinder 2 now with one of my groups, and that's one of the things I miss is there's no average damage in the monster stat blocks, and so it's like I have to roll the damage dice and add the damage dice. It's like, I don't want to do that. So, I mean,
You could make average damage.
I could, but then I don't have time for that, dude. I need it in the stat block, baby.
I did.
So I mean, there are pros and cons to each approach, and there's a strong argument to roll the dice because of the unpredictability of it, So I just don't want to do it. I want to run. My preference is to run a smooth game as opposed to because if you get too much into the rules and the nitty gritty stuff, you know what I mean. Too many rules bogs the game down, and I don't know. So my preference is like a smooth, quick paced game. Like I want to follow the rules, but like I don't want to overcomplicate things. And so I don't know. But we're pretty much ready to wrap up here, dude. Is there anything else you want to say before we call it a day?
I'm going to say that Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop role-playing games in general are the most powerful cross-curricular educational tool that exists in our world today. And to teach kids how to play them in class or in clubs as a teacher is one of the most profound and noble things that you could ever do for a student population, for a building. I train teachers every spring how to play D&D for graduate credit, for continuing education, so they can keep their teacher's license, yada yada. And it's neat to take trained teachers who have never played D&D, show them how to play D&D, and they're like, holy smokes, no wonder you do this with your kids. This game is amazing. And to watch that enlightenment hit full trained grown-up educators shows automatically what it does for kids at the age of 12 and 13. Luke and I have had lots of little points along the way that should have like really raised that flag. Family, D&D nerd teacher family, like there is nothing better that I could give to my students than the gift of this game, just as an understanding of an emulation of life, and to connect with people as they move away from my classroom, where they know that somebody who plays these games at least is worth talking to, and you have something to talk about. My brother works in kind of an executive realm, and he interviews people all the time. D&D for some executive who ever played way back could be an easy job, right? As an example. So if you teach kids to play D&D, they've got something good to do instead of something bad. They're creating instead of consuming. And if you think about the way our society is being built, consuming is the way. In-game interactions, what do they call them? In-game money, when you have to spend money for stuff in game.
Yeah, I understand. The little microtransactions.
Microtransactions inside a game. That's how games are designed now. And Fortnite is a great example because all our kids are addicted to it. D&D is not Fortnite, and Fortnite is not or ever will be D&D. Teaching kids these games, you'll see what it does. You'll see. I've seen it save kids' lives my whole life. It's saved friends of mine's lives. I've seen it save students' lives. It saved my life. So, I mean, how bad could it be if it's saving people's lives, right? Give it a shot.
Yeah, it changed my life, dude. Like, completely, radically changed my life.
Can you think back, Luke? Think about your life. Have you never played a tabletop role-playing game? Never.
I don't. It's hard to conceive of what my life would even be like because it's shaped so much of what I do. Like starting to read D&D books when I was in middle school and then playing the game in high school has influenced what I studied in college. You know what I mean? Like I would have probably studied something totally different, because I wanted to be a writer and I wanted to write fantasy novels, and so I studied writing and crap in college, and that it just my life trajectory would be completely different. It's inconceivable. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's crazy.
My students that I teach say the same thing when they leave me.
Yeah.
Is that I can't imagine a world where I didn't meet you. I can't imagine a world where we didn't get to do this. I can't imagine a world. And now I get emails from kids who are in college and things, like so neat to have been a part of so many kids' lives and know that whatever you did, like change those lives. And that's the teacher is grace in general, right? But like here is this weird teacher who like, I don't care what people tell me, like this is going to be good, and I'll throat punch every person who's in my way. And those kiddos are now reaching out to me from graduating from college and saying it was being in your room that changed literally everything. And I've recognized that from being the 10-year-old boy who was taught to play D&D on a Christmas vacation when I saw my first set of polyhedron dice of my life, and I was like, what are you doing?
They have more than 6 sides? And what are these ones that kill you if you step on them? Dude.
Yeah. So yeah.
That's cool. We did have somebody in chat said to Cade, thank you for sharing your experience with us tonight. Glad that Luke brought you on the channel to allow you to spread the word. Thanks, Luke, for arranging this with Cade. So you're very welcome, dude. I'm happy to help. Okay, I think we got to wrap it up there. We have the winner for the giveaway. It is Meepy. Meepy, you won the giveaway. I'll send you an email, dude. You won. Congratulations. So, Cade, thank you so much for coming on and talking about D&D and education and crap. So, it sounds like this is doing a whole lot of amazing stuff for students. So, I'm happy to be able to share the word and crap on that and get some more awareness around this topic. So, thanks, dude, for coming on. It's been awesome.
I really appreciate the opportunity to spread the message, Luke. I thank you. I couldn't think of anybody better to help make this message known than yourself. My kids love your channel. I love your channel. I've watched lots of your stuff. I send them to watch your stuff to help them with their dungeon mastering, etc. So I'm very, very grateful for you and what you do, and I'm humbled at the opportunity to be on your channel. I'm so grateful.
Well, thank you, dude. Yeah, just keep sending them. We'll train a whole generation of dungeon masters, man.
Well, I can't do it all by myself. And if you ever need me again, you just let me know, bro. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
here. I'm doing the work. Okay, I'm doing the work.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, ladies and gentlemen, have yourselves a wonderful night. We're calling it there. Stay on with me, Cade.
Yes, sir.
I will stop the stream. Right. Bye. All right, stop recording.